I never imagined my life would change forever when a simple knock led to an unexpected friendship. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The wind howled outside, pushing against the windows, a sharp chill running down my spine. That knock echoed in my heart, a tremor of curiosity in a house that felt far too empty. I stood frozen in my living room, my breath caught in my throat and my hands trembled as I approached the door. I peeked through the peephole. There was no one. The world outside was a blur of shadows and swirling leaves. The silence grew heavy, pressing against me like a weight I couldn't shake off. Maybe it was just the wind, I thought. Maybe I was imagining things. Still, I couldn't ignore the sensation tingling at the back of my neck. I glanced at the clutter in the house, a testament to my chaotic life. Plates piled high in the sink, clothes scattered like forgotten dreams. Just a few days ago, I had lost my mother, and those precious moments had turned into unending days of solitude. The weight of grief was suffocating. I craved connection, yet every time I reached out, I felt more lost. Gathering my courage, I swung the door open to reveal a girl. There she stood, dripping with rain, hair matted and wild. Her eyes, wide and bright like summer skies after a storm, held secrets I longed to uncover. She looked at me, soaking wet, but didn't speak. The air crackled with something electric. "Who are you?" I finally managed, my voice trembling. She smiled, a soft, shy smile, and in that moment, it felt like the whole universe shifted. "I'm here for the adventure," she said, as if the very word held a magic of its own. There was an aura about her, a mix of mystery and warmth, and I felt something inside me stir a flicker of hope in the midst of my sorrow. Suddenly, shadows danced behind her, swirling in the corners of my vision. A chill ran down my spine. Who was this girl? And what kind of adventure was she talking about? Her presence felt like both a gift and a warning. The air around us buzzed with tension, and I could hear my heartbeat hammering in my chest. I sensed that opening the door had led to something infinitely more complicated than I expected. In the silence between us, questions rose like fog. Was I ready to let someone in? Or was I simply inviting out the darkness I had been running from? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The rain continued to patter softly against the porch, creating a symphony of solitude that enveloped us both. I stepped back instinctively to let her in, and with that small gesture, I felt the fragile barrier ID built around my heart crack just a little. She glanced around the cluttered living room, her eyes scanning the remnants of my grief, the untouched photographs, the empty chair that still seemed to echo with my mother's laughter, the constant reminder of an absence I wasn't yet ready to confront. "That I am Ruby," she said, brushing a drippy lock of hair behind her ear, a bright spot in the dreariness of the day. There was an honesty in her gaze that drew me closer. "What's your name, Ella?" I whispered, surprised by how easily my name flowed from my lips, as if it had been waiting for someone to ask. Our connection felt fragile, yet there was something unexplainable binding us, and for a fleeting moment, I felt the weight of my sorrow lift. "That I was hoping to find someone," she said, her voice tinged with a quiet urgency. "I didn't expect it to be like this." She gestured to the living room, a place I usually rushed through with my eyes cast down, unwilling to confront the mess that mirrored my heart. "Neither did I admitted, allowing a small smile. Maybe this wasn't just a random encounter. Maybe she was the sign I needed. "What kind of adventure are you looking for?" I asked, trying to mirror the glimmer of hope in her sharp blue eyes. "A way to escape," she replied, her voice dropping to a whisper, as if confessing a secret. "I'm running away from something," the sincerity in her voice resonated with my own tangled emotions. "Aren't we all?" I replied, surprising myself with the honesty. "What if that escape leads me somewhere I don't want to go?" In a heartbeat, her expression shifted, shadows of her own struggles crossing her features. "You have to find out. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight within ourselves." Her words struck a chord deep within, the truth echoing sharply against the backdrop of my grief. A yearning to shed my pain, to escape to something unknown, danced on the edge of my consciousness. Despite my fears, I felt an undeniable pull toward Ruby. "Wanna help me clean up?" I offered, trying to buoy the atmosphere. "The adventure starts there, I guess." She arched an eyebrow, a teasing smile flickering on her lips. "Cleaning? Is that the grand adventure?" I laughed, the sound filling the room like sunlight piercing a stormy sky. "It's a start, right?" As we worked, our laughter began to weave a tapestry of connection, each shared moment building a bridge through our vulnerabilities. We tossed stray clothes into a pile, exchanging stories of our lives. Ruba's words were a balm to my self-imposed isolation, and as I shared memories of my mother, I felt a flicker of warmth that hadn't ignited in ages. But just as I began to feel truly connected, my phone buzzed, shattering the fragile tranquility. I glanced at the screen and felt my heart drop. It was a text from my estranged father, a man who had chosen distance over family the moment my mother took her last breath. "Did I need to talk?" It read simply, the weight of unspoken words heavy behind it. I quickly shut off the screen, shoving the device down into my pocket as a wave of dread washed over me. Ruby noticed and paused, her expression shifting from lighthearted to concerned. "Everything okay?" I nodded, yet I felt the fissure between my heart and my mouth grow deeper. How could I explain the turmoil surging within me? How could I share the fear that seeped into my very bones at the thought of facing him again? "Just family stuff," I said, forcing a smile. "It's nothing really. Just a distraction," but the lies felt bitter, and with every passing moment, I felt Ruby inching closer to the truth. I caught her studying me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "Distractions can be good or bad," she said thoughtfully, "depending on what they're hiding." Just at that moment, a loud crash came from the kitchen, sending both of us jumping. A glass shattered to the floor, the chaos of my emotions mirrored in the mess. Heart racing, I rushed to assess the damage, but at the same time, I felt an odd sense of foreboding focusing on both the past and future. I turned to Ruby, who stood in the doorway behind me, her eyes wide, yet this time filled with an understanding that felt sacred. "Maybe," I whispered, trembling slightly, "we need to face our chaos together." As I knelt to pick up the jagged remnants of my scattered life, the door rattled again, and the familiar echo of a knock split through the air. Panic fluttered through my chest. Could it be him? "Are you expecting someone?" Ruby asked, the warmth of her presence both comforting and confounding. That I shook my head, my mouth suddenly dry. "No. But..." As I paused, the next knock came, a demand this time, insistent and unyielding, shaking the very foundation of the fragile peace we had begun to build. My heart raced, and I exchanged a charged look with Ruby, both of us caught in the moment, as shadows from my past threatened to engulf us anew. The darkness I had tried so hard to escape loomed closer, ready to creep back into my life. "Just stay here," I urged Ruby as I approached the door, the air humming with tension. With every step, the whispers of uncertainty filled my mind, urging me to retreat, yet I pushed forward. My world was about to change again, and I wasn't certain whether I was ready for what lay behind that door. The knocking grew louder, each thud resonating through my bones, a countdown to an inevitable confrontation I dreaded. My heart raced, clashing between fear and the faint glimmer of hope that had begun to grow in Ruba's presence. As I hesitated, Ruby stepped closer, her hand brushing against my arm, grounding me momentarily in the storm of my thoughts. "You don't have to answer if you're not ready," she said softly, her voice a soothing balm in the chaos. But the knocking persisted, relentless. With each strike, the memories of my father flooded my mind, his stern face, the resentment that had built a deep chasm between us. The man who walked away the moment I needed him the most, leaving behind a child lost in a sea of grief and unanswered questions. I have to, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I squared my shoulders, acutely aware of Ruba's concerned gaze on me. It's overdue that I opened the door, bracing myself for whatever lay beyond. As the door swung wide, I was met not by my father, but by a stranger, a stout middle-aged man with a friendly face and a clipboard tucked under his arm. Good afternoon. Are you the residents of this house? His cheerful demeanor caught me off guard, like the first rays of sunlight breaking through storm clouds that I blinked at him, momentarily disoriented. Yes, I managed, my heart still racing from the prior tension. Fantastic. I'm here with the local community outreach program, he announced, his smile infectious. We're gathering stories and memories of our neighborhood for a project, celebrating our history. Would you be willing to share a few tales with me? Ruba's eyes sparkled with unspoken amusement as she stepped closer, drawn in by the contrast of this unexpected visitor against the backdrop of my turbulent emotions. I exchanged a glance with her, half embarrassed, half grateful for the distraction. I'm not sure I'm the best candidate for that, I began, but the stranger's enthusiasm was unwavering. Everyone has a story. He insisted. Even the simplest memories can paint a beautiful picture. And who knows? You might uncover something surprising about yourself in the process. I felt a glimmer of warmth in his words, tentatively pushing aside the chaos as curiosity sparked. Could this moment be a gentle nudge from the universe to explore the fragments of my past? Before I could think twice about it, Ruby spoke up. I think it could be a good idea, she said, her voice emboldened by excitement. You've been living with your memories for so long, Ella. Maybe it's time to let them out. Something in her gaze urged me forward, igniting a sense of courage I hadn't anticipated. The pressure in my chest eased slightly, and I nodded slowly. Okay, they'll give it a try. Great. The man exclaimed, jovially ushering us both onto the porch. Let's start with the good stuff. What's a cherished memory from living here? As I began to share anecdotes about my childhood adventures, the stories rolled off my tongue, ebbing and flowing like tears that had long been held back. We laughed and reminisced through moments of pure joy, recalling the wild parties my mother used to throw for every little holiday as she filled our home with laughter, love, and irresistible cookies that smelled of home. With each shared memory, something inside me began to shift, scattering the remnants of grief like autumn leaves blown by a warm breeze. It was liberating to speak these words, to let pieces of my life out into the world, especially with Ruby at my side, her supportive presence like an anchor in turbulent waters. But then, as if summoned by the pull of somber fates, the cheerful stranger paused, his smile faltering when I mentioned my mother's passing. His eyes glistened with sympathy as he considered his next question. If you don't mind me asking, how did you cope after? Losing someone is never easy. The air around us thickened with a sudden gravity. I felt an invisible wall rising again, and Ruby's hand found mine, a silent promise that I wouldn't face this alone. Her support anchored me as memories rushed in, tangled and unwelcome. The moment stretched, and I opened my mouth to answer but felt the words choke me, suffocated by pent-up grief. The truth, so long buried, began to rise like bile in my throat. Just as I feared I would drown in my emotions, a sudden crash echoed from the back of the house. The sound was sharp, so out of place amid the warmth we'd forged moments before. Intrigued but worried, I turned my head to glance toward the doorway. What was that? I asked, panic flaring anew. It came from the kitchen, Ruby said, her grip tightening around my hand. Before I could think, Ruby rushed inside, and I followed, a heart-stopping urgency pulsing through me. I found her standing at the threshold of the kitchen, her mouth slightly agape. The table was overturned, the remnants of our earlier activities scattered like lost dreams, but it wasn't the mess that robbed me of breath. Pinned beneath the table, in clear view, was a small, weathered envelope. What's that? I whispered, drawn to it like a moth to flame. My heart pounded anew as I crouched to retrieve it, Ruby hovering behind me, curiosity mingling with concern. The moment I touched the rough paper, a shudder rocketed through me, the stark reality of my life returning to center stage. With trembling hands, I flipped it over, my name written in my mother's elegant script. A world of unspoken words lay beyond, shrouded in years of absence and uncertainty, a connection I thought forever severed, now thrust back into my life. What is it? Ruby asked, her eyes wide and searching as I unfurled it. As I began to read, everything else faded, and with it came the realization that this wasn't just an envelope, it was the potential to alter the very fabric of all I understood about my past and my future. As I read the first few lines, I felt my world twist under the weight of words, a revelation waiting to change everything I thought I knew, one final shattering of the fragile peace I sought to build. And just like that, as the shadows of my past loomed closer, the thrill of an unexpected friendship collided with the stark reality of unresolved conflicts, leaving me standing on the precipice of something I could neither predict nor resist. The words danced in front of my eyes, blurring into a tumult of emotions as I struggled to digest what I was reading. Every letter felt like an electric jolt through my veins, unveiling secrets that lay dormant for far too long. I couldn't formulate the thoughts fast enough. My mind raced between disbelief and an overwhelming yearning for all that was hidden beneath layers of silence. Ruby stood beside me, her presence a steady flame in an encroaching dark. "Ella, what does it say?" she urged softly, her breath barely above a whisper. The urgency in her voice pulled me back from the edge of a dizzying abyss, but I still couldn't bring myself to speak. Instead, I allowed my gaze to dance among the familiar curves of my mother's handwriting, searching for clarity, for solace. My heart jumped at a sequence of words. "I never wanted to leave you." The ink smudged where my fingers trembled around the paper, and beyond that were lines that hinted at a truth I had unknowingly carried like a lead weight. The reason for her departure was not as simple as I had always believed. Without thinking, I read aloud the opening lines, letting Ruby absorb them alongside me. "If you're reading this, it means I'm not there, and I can only hope that one day you'll understand how much I loved you." My voice wavered, catching on the edges of pain that seemed to claw at my throat. The stranger, momentarily forgotten, stood frozen at the kitchen door, a witness to a private moment of vulnerability that felt both sacred and shameful. I looked up unconsciously, torn between the comfort of sharing this moment with Ruby and the sudden wave of embarrassment about opening wounds in front of an outsider. But Ruby's steady gaze urged me on. "It's okay, Ella," she said softly. "You don't have to hide." Encouraged, I continued to read, the words becoming a lifeline in a turbulent sea of emotion. Each sentence whispered secrets of love and sacrifice, of fear and heartache. My mother painted a picture of a young woman caught in circumstances beyond her control, all while voicing her unwavering love for me. Tears prickled the back of my eyes, and I struggled to keep my voice steady as I reached the part where she confessed her regrets, spilling promises of a future she hoped I'd find. Suddenly, the weight of the envelope shifted, as if brushing against some deeper truth rooted within me. "I was afraid," I read, "afraid that my struggles would become yours, too. But I wanted you to fight for the life you deserve." I inhaled sharply, the room expanding and contracting with the intensity of the moment. It was as if the universe cracked open, spilling forth a rush of understanding that had always eluded me. My mother had been fighting battles I had never known about. A swell of compassion bloomed in my chest, but it was drenched with the salt of grief for all the time lost between us. "It's like she's right here with you," Ruby murmured, her voice barely audible over the quick thrum of my heartbeat. "Ella, this is incredible. You're discovering her all over again." Lifting my gaze, I saw a flicker of admiration in Ruby's eyes, further infusing the moment with trust and connection. The sincerity of her support warmed me deeply, beginning to heal the fractures inside. But even as I began to feel a warmth ignite in my heart, a dark cloud lingered at the fringes of my consciousness, waiting to pounce. The enveloping relief was quickly swallowed by the stark realization that there were still questions unasked, truths yet to be uncovered. Who was this stranger who'd knocked on my door just when I needed a distraction? Suddenly, an undeniable twist of dread took root in my gut. The world around me stilled, the happy memories of laughter and companionship dulled by a sense of impending doom. Just as I contemplated whether to bury the envelope again or share my findings, the man at the threshold cleared his throat slowly, drawing all eyes back to him. "Excuse me," he said softly, his voice filled with an unexpected gravitas, as though aware of the growing tension in the room. "I know this may be a difficult moment, but there's something else you both should know. I braced myself, the weight of the words yet unspoken hanging like precipitation in the air, thick and charged. As he took a step forward, my heart raced again. The fragile shelter of newfound hope began to crack under the pressure of unknown truths. His gaze flickered to the envelope in my hand before returning to meet mine, his expression shifting from amusement to somber determinism. I believe it's time for you to know your mother wasn't just a loving parent, she was part of something much bigger, a legacy tied to this neighborhood that has been shrouded in silence for far too long. As the silence settled back around us, I felt the gravity of his revelation pull me under, the weight of a tidal wave that threatened to drown everything I thought I understood about my past. The envelope, once a beacon of hope, now held an uncertainty that threatened to upend the delicate balance I had begun to establish. Just as I opened my mouth to ask what he meant, my breath caught in my throat as realization settled like a boulder in my chest. Why did this stranger know about my mother? What hidden chapters awaited behind the choices she made and the life she had lived? A chilling thought struck me as I stood there, grappling with the truth that this journey was far from over, and everything was about to change in ways I could never have imagined. The tension in the air thickened, a palpable force as my mind raced to process the stranger's words. I could feel Ruby's gaze drilling into the side of my face, a silent plea for clarity that echoed in the silence. The envelope weighed heavier in my hand, crumpling under the pressure of revelations yet to unfold. Who are you? I managed to stammer, fear lacing my voice as the uncertainty coiled tighter within me. My heart thudded, rage swirling with disbelief. How had this man burst into my life at the very moment when I was peeling back layers of something raw and precious? He took a step closer, his presence forcing a choice on me, to retreat into myself or lean forward into the tumult of the unknown. My name is Daniel, he said, his voice smoother now, as if my vulnerability had softened the edges of his own. I knew your mother. My breath hitched, a lightning bolt of recognition striking me. How? I breathed, each word trembling against my lips like a bird desperate to escape. His eyes narrowed as he considered me, his expression caught between the weight of memories and the responsibility of what he carried. Your mother was special, Ella. Not just to you, but to many of us in this neighborhood. She was part of a community that understood love in ways few ever do. But it was complicated, and fear kept us silent. Complicated how? Ruby joined the conversation, her voice steady yet filled with curiosity. It seemed she was weaving herself into the fabric of this moment, and with her, I felt emboldened to face the storm. Daniel hesitated. For an instant, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. I sensed he was weighing his words as though they held the power to shatter worlds. Your mother was part of a network that helped others in distress. Refugees, families in crisis. She brought hope where there seemed to be none. But in the end, they turned on her. A cold chill wrapped around me, dragging the warmth of Ruby's spirit into shadow. The love I had begun to embrace with my mother's words now felt tainted. How could she have fought battles I was unaware of while I grappling with the invisible wounds of her absence? Turned on her? I echoed, my voice faltering under the weight of dread. Daniel nodded, the sorrow deepening the lines on his forehead. It was a time of fear, Ella. The world judged those who reached out to help. Your mother tried to protect you from the fallout, but in doing so, she took the burden upon herself. Regret mingled with anger as I pictured my mother alone in her struggles, crafting sacrifice after sacrifice under the guise of love. I had thought her absence was punishment for my inadequacies, but now, I saw the silhouette of a woman heroically battling against demons I could barely begin to comprehend. And you? I asked, my courage sparked by the new reality. What did you do? A haunted look clouded his eyes for a fleeting moment. I tried to help. But I was only one man. Eventually I lost her. The weight of his confession struck me deep. Just like unresolved parts of my life, Daniel carried his burdens like a ghost, shaped by loss and haunted by his own inability to save someone he loved. That's why I'm here, he continued, his tone shifting to one of urgency. To tell you that the legacy your mother left behind is not dead. It simply needs to be uncovered, cherished, and rebuilt. There is still good in this world, it just needs guidance. As hope flickered in the depths of his words, the counterbalance of despair still haunted me. What could I possibly offer in the face of such monumental loss? Just as I thought he had poured every possibility into the room, a surge of determination arose within me, igniting from his sorrow. In that moment, the pain birthed purpose. Perhaps uncovering my mother's past wasn't solely about healing myself but also about resurrecting the flame she had ignited in the community. Freed from the constraints of my own fear, I took a step forward, kindling a quiet fire deep within. "Tell me everything," I urged, my voice shaking but resolute, but just as the words left my lips, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen, resonating through the air like thunder. The sudden eruption of sound jolted us, our gazes snapping towards the source. In an uncanny twist, it was the smashed remnants of a porcelain vase I had never noticed before, shattered across the floor like the fragile state of my life, beautiful yet precarious, what I began, the fracture growing deeper with every passing second. Daniel went pale, his expression darkening as he looked at me. "Ella, we might not be alone. If they have come for her, we're running out of time." A cold realization swept over me. The lineage my mother had carried and concealed, it left remnants in the shadows, catching the embers of danger once again. The thought that doom could still hover over my head sent a shiver down my spine. "Who's they?" I gasped, heart racing as the foundation I had begun to mend threatened to crumble once again. Daniel reached out, urgency now coursing through his etched features. "We need to go now." Panic washed over me, but the echo of my mother's love, tangled up with fleeting threads of kindness from Daniel, anchored me in the storm of uncertainty. We stood on the brink of discovery, unearthing the past while racing toward an uncertain future, teetering on the edge of danger yet craving clarity. The story was just beginning, and with it came the dawn of choices I had yet to confront, but faced with a fear now palpably close, I knew one thing for certain: I had to face the shadows that entwined my life, and this time, I wouldn't be alone. Everything inside me screamed to stay, to demand answers from Daniel and to uncover everything that had been withheld from me. But the urgency in his tone and the fear etched across his face snapped me back to the reality spiraling around us like a violent storm. "Go where?" I asked, my voice quaking. Daniel's gaze darted toward the kitchen entrance as if the very shadows held watch over us. "We can't stay here. They might already know you're involved. We need to find a safe place to talk." "Who are they?" Ruby interjected, her bravado flickering but her resolve unwavering. "What do they want?" Before Daniel could answer, a loud thump echoed from the hallway beyond the kitchen, followed by the sound of footsteps. My heart dropped into the pit of my stomach, every instinct telling me to flee. This was no longer just a clash of past and present, it had become life and death. "Ella, we need to move," he said, gripping my arm firmly yet not painfully. I could feel the warmth of his energy amidst the encroaching dread, and it braided something deep within me, a fierce need to survive and a flicker of courage that I had not known existed. I nodded, my head racing with frightening thoughts, but my feet seemed stuck in place. Just then, Daniel took my hand, leading me toward the back door. Ruby followed closely, her trust in me unwavering even now, each echoing footstep igniting my resolve. "Stay quiet," Daniel whispered as we slipped outside, the cool evening air wrapping around us like a protective embrace. The world beyond felt almost surreal, the usual sounds of chirping crickets and distant laughter drowned out by the din of my racing heart. "We don't have much time," Daniel urged, turning his focus to a nearby shed, its faded blue paint peeling in the twilight. In here, we hurried to the shed, ducking inside and closing the door quietly behind us. The space was cramped, shadows dancing on the walls as moonlight filtered through the gaps. I could barely catch my breath, my mind still reeling from the revelations. "Okay, Daniel," I said, my voice steadier now. "What's happening?" "Who are they?" He took a moment to regroup, his brow furrowed. "There's a group, Ella. They believe your mother took something vital from them, something they want back. They think it's linked to the work she was doing, and if they find out you're here they have no idea how much you know, and that puts you in danger." The weight of his words sank into the pit of my stomach. It was overwhelming, yet at the same time, a new sense of purpose began to surface inside me. My mother had risked everything for others. What legacy had she left hidden beneath layers of secrets? And why did they suspect I might hold answers? Then we need to figure out what that something is, I replied, my voice gaining strength with each syllable. I can't let them hurt me or anyone else because of her choices, but how? Ruby whispered, her brave facade shaken. We don't even know who they are or what they're looking for. We find out, I said, determination hardening in my chest. We dig deeper into my mother's past and discover what she was protecting. If this is about legacy, then we need to honor it. Daniel's expression shifted, the tension in his body easing slightly as consideration took hold. You're right. But we have to be careful. I've lost too much already to let history repeat itself. Just as my mind began to unravel a plan, the shed rattled with a menacing thud from the outside. My heart surged as the shadow of a figure loomed at the door, harsh and unyielding. Ella, Daniel hissed urgently. Stay back. I slid behind a stack of old crates, my breath catching in my throat as the door creaked open slowly. A silhouette stepped inside, cloaked in darkness save for the faint moonlight catching the glint of something metallic in their hands. Come out, Ella, the voice pierced through the gloom like a blade, familiar and yet laced with something chilling. We know you're in here. Fear clawed at my insides, and I could hear Ruba's shallow breaths behind me, our collective panic thick like poison in the air. My mind raced, searching for the identity of the figure and grappling with the sensation of being hunted. Stand back, Daniel muttered, his posture shifting to one of readiness. The moment stretched, caught in the grip of inevitability. Who are you? I cried, forcing my voice out loud enough to break through the shock holding me captive. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a face I recognized all too well. My heart sank, an eerie dissonance making it hard to breathe. It was someone I had trusted, someone who had painted the world of my childhood and glossed over dreams. Hello, Ella, they said, their voice dripping with a mixture of familiarity and betrayal. I've been looking for you. And with that, everything I thought I knew about my life shattered again, leaving only jagged edges and untempered uncertainty. The room wavered around me, reality distorted by the crushing weight of disbelief. My breath caught in my throat as I tried to process the figure standing before us. Greg? I finally managed to whisper, the name tasting foreign on my lips. It felt like speaking a long-forgotten language. Yes, it's me, he said, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth, but his eyes glinted with something darker. I had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but here we are. What do you want? Ruby's voice quaked, but the defiance was palpable, echoing back the strength she always managed to find in moments like these. That I want to help, Greg replied, though his tone sent a chill through my spine. But first, we need to understand what your mother took. There are forces at play far more dangerous than you can imagine, forces that want the truth to stay buried. Daniel stepped in front of me protectively, his posture fierce and resolute. You think we'll believe you after everything that's happened? Why should we trust you? Because I'm not your enemy, Greg said, not losing the slight smirk that made me want to recoil. There are people who think they can pressure me, but they don't know what they're messing with. And neither do you. Clearly, speak plainly, Greg. Daniel's voice was sharp, a knife cutting through the muffled tension. What do you know? Greg's eyes flickered to me, and for a moment, a spark of the warmth I remembered seeped through. Ella, your mother protected something vital, something that could alter the very balance of power. But she made her mistakes, and now they're coming for you to finish what she started. That I felt like I was floating above the ground, and every word echoed in the hollow shell I had become. What did she take? I asked, my fingers fidgeting with the fabric of my shirt, seeking solace in the familiar. What she took isn't a what, it's a who, Greg explained, his voice softening. There's a person, an ally of your mother, who knows everything, but she's gone into hiding. They believe if they find you, they can force that knowledge out. The implications of his words were staggering, and the reality of my life shifted beneath me. Why would you care about this? I demanded, seeking any shred of motive from him. You were always so far removed from the mess. You could have walked away. His expression faltered, his bravado cracked just enough for reality to seep through. Because I loved her too, Ella. Your mother was a force, someone worth fighting for, even when the rest of the world turned against her. He paused, emotions flipping across his face like quicksilver. And I can't let her legacy die with you. An uncomfortable silence hung in the shed, filled only by our quickened breaths. Every moment stretched into infinity as I struggled to stay anchored to my thoughts, memories of laughter and warmth colliding with the present chaos. Let's say we believe you, Daniel said, his voice rolling back the tension. What are our next steps? First, Greg replied, his demeanor gaining confidence, we need to find where she hid her secrets. You might need her old research notes, but they're stashed away in a location that only I know. It's risky, but if you're serious about uncovering the truth, this is how we'll start. Then lead the way, I said, buoyed by the spark of determination deep within me. If a storm was brewing, I wanted to be the one to navigate its course. I would fight for my mother's legacy and the unknown ally who could help me grasp the truth just out of reach. No, Ruby said suddenly, her voice low, filled with unexpected conviction. We can't just trust him. You're my best friend, Ella, and you deserve better than to follow someone into the dark. Her fierce protection ignited the warmth in my chest. I turned to Greg, trying to determine if the flickering hope inside me could be real. You need to prove you're on our side, not just for me but for Ruby too. If you want our trust, you'll have to earn it, I said, each word laced with strength I hadn't known I possessed. Greg's smirk faded into something more somber. Fair enough. But time isn't on our side. They're closing in, and you may become their next target. Before I could respond, a sudden crash reverberated through the shed, and the air grew thick with dread. At the entrance, multiple shadows danced against the walls, unfamiliar voices flooding our haven with tension. Take cover! Daniel shouted, his instincts kicking in, pulling me and Ruby to the back as Greg braced himself at the door, ready to confront whatever darkness awaited us outside. In that heartbeat, I realized the stakes were higher than I ever dreamed. With secrets, betrayal, and the echoes of a legacy behind us, I was uncertain of how this tale would unfold. As the world outside broke into chaos, the very next move would define the fragile bridge between life and loss. Then I remembered the diaries. My mother's painstakingly written words held the answers we sought. If only we could survive the moments about to unfold outside. Would the truth empower us, or would it drown us in shadows? In the split second that followed, I made a decision. One step closer to finding out who I truly was, whatever it might reveal. The chaos erupted as the door splintered under the force of a heavy impact, a harsh reminder that time was no longer on our side. I pressed my back against the cold wall, my heart racing in tandem with the throaty shouts outside. The world blended into a cacophony of panic and confusion, and I struggled to focus on the fleeting moments shared with Ruby and Daniel. Stay quiet, Daniel hissed, the tension coiling tightly around us. I could feel Ruby's hand tremble against mine, grounding me even as fear bubbled up like molten lava, threatening to spill over. Greg was positioned in front of the entrance, an unlikely guardian set against the tempest threatening to sweep us away. Despite my misgiving, a sliver of admiration swelled within me. For the first time in years, I felt the fragile thread of hope stretch taut, cueing my instincts to rise above the tide of despair. Ella, listen, Greg's voice was steady but the roar outside grew louder, crashing over his words. They're not firing aimlessly. They want something, someone. We must move when I give the signal. You three need to trust me. Why should we? Ruby snapped, her resilient spirit determined to shield us from this madness. You expect us to fall in line behind you? You're the reason we're in danger in the first place. No, this danger has festered long before I stepped into your lives, Greg insisted, his intensity suffusing the air between us. But we don't have time for blame or second-guessing. If we don't take action, there's no way out of this. A fissure of fear crawled up my spine, stealing my breath as fresh shouts surged from outside. I bit my lip, contemplating the consequences of trusting a man who had only recently re-entered my life, cloaked in layers of uncertainty. Yet every instinct within me resonated with the urgency of action. Every fiber of my being yearned for courage. A shrill scream pierced through the chaos. I could hear the unmistakable shuffling of feet, urgency laced with desperation. The notes. I pulled away from Ruby's grip, the vision of my mother's diary spinning in my mind like the pages in a whirlwind. If we can get to them, it may lead us to safety. Are you insane? Ruby protested. We can't just run out there. I'm not suggesting we go in blind, I countered, my resolve igniting. But we need to know what kind of danger we're dealing with. If Greg's right and there are larger forces at play, all we have is this chance. Daniel's gaze flickered over to me, searching for signs of uncertainty, but instead found a panic smothered by an ember of stubborn determination. Okay, he breathed, but we stick together, no matter what. Follow my lead, Greg instructed, and it felt both terrifying and reassuring to hear the authority in his voice. On three, with our hearts thundering in sync, we nodded. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown to an uncertain future. A shattering crash sent fragments of wood flying, and adrenaline surged within me. Point 1. Greg called, readying himself. Ruby held on tighter, a protective instinct sparking in her eyes, as Daniel, ever the rock, nudged me forward. Point 2. Greg continued, and I sensed the shift in the atmosphere. Every moment stretched painfully long, teetering on the edge of fate. Point 3. With a deep breath, we bounded toward the door, a wild fusion of uncertainty and bravery propelling us forward. As we burst from the shelter of the shed into the fading light, the shouts morphed into clear voices. Figures emerged from the shadows, and I fleetingly wondered if they held answers or more chaos. Stop right there. A voice bellowed, and I stumbled, almost falling as I caught sight of the faces marked with cold determination. My stomach twisted. They were the same people who had haunted my family's past, the very beings my mother had shielded me from. We're not here for you, one of them growled, pointing directly at Greg. We just want the girl. Panic splashed through my veins like ice water. Me? I whirled to Greg, searching his face for any hint of reassurance. What do they want? But the shadow of betrayal lingered in the air, thick and choking. Suddenly, with a movement too quick to track, the darkness descended upon us, and Greg took a step forward to shield us.no. I gasped, the very fabric of my reality quaking as turmoil erupted around us, and then, amongst the chaos, stark and unmistakable, a name escaped from my lips, Ben. I realized, my heart hammering furiously, as I finally recognized one of the figures stepping closer. My estranged brother stood among them, a ghost from the past I never expected to face. The world around me spun, and the realization crashed down like a tidal wave. Why hadn't I seen it before? The enemy was not only at the gate, the very one I had been trying to find had always been on the inside. As the shadows closed in, I stood poised at the edge of revelation, trembling between love, betrayal, and an uncertain chance at redemption. This moment would define who I was destined to become, entwined in a labyrinth of conflict just beginning to unravel. The commotion blurred into a kaleidoscope of confusion, and time itself seemed to stretch. Ben's presence was a jarring note in the symphony of chaos enveloping us. My heart, already layered with panic, now pulsed with an old ache I thought had long since settled. Memories of laughter and shared secrets danced through my mind, quickly shrouded by the depth of our estrangement. Ben. I breathed, feeling both relief and a confusion that set my chest tight. I longed to reach him, to bridge the chasm carved between us, but the weapons and angry voices around us were remorseless. I told you to stay away from her. Greg yelled, his tone laced with an urgency that only deepened my anxiety. You don't know what you're messing with. Ben's gaze flickered over me, caught between fury and concern. Ella, please, he said, his voice softer, almost pleading. I didn't want it to come to this. I thought what? I interrupted, feeling the heat of betrayal sting deeper than all the chaos unfolding. That showing up with them was the solution. Before Ben could defend himself, the thugs surrounding us pressed in closer, their intentions as clear as the knives glinting under the dimming light. Step back, one of them warned, pushing Greg aside. In that split second, instinct kicked in, and I pulled away from the cluster, stepping slightly forward. You want me? I'm right here, I yelled, my voice quaking but defiant. Ella, no. Ruby called, her eyes wide with fear as I stepped away from the protective circle formed around me. You don't know what they'll do if they get you. Greg shouted, pain etching deeper into his tone. What was it that he feared? Try me. I snapped, a surge of reckless bravery roaring inside me. If ever there was a time for fighting back, it was now. Somewhere in the tumult, I caught a fleeting glimpse of Daniel's face, a mask of raw urgency. Ella, don't. He barked, every syllable a pulse of desperation that echoed between us. His own inner storm mirrored the one again raging outside, yet amid his worry, a glimmer of something softer lay ready to break through, but Ben took a step forward, the stark reality of his affiliation hitting me like a blow. You don't have to do this. I can help you. His voice strained through clenched teeth, caught between duty and the knowledge of our shared past. The time for help has passed, I spat, old wounds rushing back as I felt the weight of my mother's secret spiral around us, threatening to suffocate me. Then, surprisingly, as they began to move in closer, a curious figure emerged from the crowd. A woman with wild hair and dirt-streaked hands pushed through the throng. She looked no older than I was, but determination radiated from her, stark against the fear seeping like fog into the scene. Stop. She shouted, her voice slicing through the chaos with unexpected clarity. You want the girl? You'll have to go through me. The thugs hesitated, disbelief flickering across their faces, buying us a moment, a precious, fragile heartbeat where hope flared to life. Ben turned, anger blending with admiration. Lila. You shouldn't be here. Neither should you, she shot back, meeting his gaze with fierce resolve. You're not their puppet. I just found my own purpose, and I intend to protect it. Ruba's grip tightened around my arm, her heart racing along with mine, while Daniel stayed alert, scanning for any openings amid the turmoil. In this shared moment, a wave of shared determination surged between us, a silent understanding that we were in this together. Get ready to move. We're not waiting for a miracle, Greg instructed, his voice infusing the air with a tinge of something akin to hope. This is our chance. We need. Suddenly, the commanding figure from before swiveled towards Ben, fierce determination swimming in their gaze. Are you with us or against us? Ben hesitated, caught in the tumultuous swell of his past and the loyalty he bore towards the family I had lost. It made the air heavy, thick enough to choke on the weight of the tension statically crackling around us. Bella, he offered finally, softly, a desperate plea masked in the anguish of belonging. I didn't choose this, but you need to choice, quickly. My heart fluttered between anger and a flicker of hope. Before I could respond, the forces outside the shed surged forward, raw chaos intersecting our moment of decision. Each heartbeat echoed with an ominous potential, and dread settled across my chest like a shroud. Ella. Ruby yelled, her voice slicing through the haze, but I barely registered it. Instead, I met Ben's eyes, searching for clarity amid the panic. Did I trust him, or was my desire for connection clouding my judgment? As everyone braced for the undeniable clash ahead, my breath caught between what might be chosen and what was lost forever. The true nature of betrayal loomed heavy, irrevocably altering the course of everything I thought I knew. And there, standing at the precipice, I felt the ground shift beneath me, envisioning a future I could no longer control as chaos unfolded, revealing more secrets than I dared to confront. The chaos outside the shed swirled like a tempest, but inside, an electric tension hung heavy in the air. I felt the weight of decisions hanging before me like a fork in the road, the path of vengeance that promised to entangle me in bitterness, or the road that led to understanding and reconciliation. I had spent so long in the shadow of grief, running from the ghost of my mother, never realizing that instincts could guide us to brighter place if only we chose to follow. Bella. Ruba's voice echoed inside my head, a lifeline reaching through the dark uncertainty. Her grip on my arm tightened, drawing me back from the precipice of despair threatening to swallow me whole. I realized, as the dust of chaos around us settled into haunting silence, that the time for running was over. The time for solutions began now. Get behind me. Daniel commanded, his familiar strength anchoring me as Greg moved to solidify the barrier between us and our pursuers, but my heart raced not with fear, but a spark of clarity. The revelation of my estranged brother, Ben, felt like a riptide pulling at the shores of my understanding. What choice did I have now? I could cling to the pain of the past or reach out for what might bridge our fractured connection. Every decision hinged on that moment, a delicate alignment of heart standing on the edge of retribution. "Ben," I called out, my voice unwavering despite my shaking hands. "How did you allow it to come to this? You were supposed to protect us. Mom trusted you." He met my gaze, his expression faltering under layers of conflicted emotions. "Ella, I thought I could put up walls to keep us safe, and I was wrong. I should have come back long before now, then let's make this right together," I replied, pulling him back to the moment. "Well, uncover her truth. But you have to help us through this." The stakes were too high, the ghosts of my childhood loomed large, but they flickered uncertainly, teetering on the threshold of light that a newfound determination crackled in the air between us, and I saw the flickers of hope ignite in Ben's eyes, but they were soon flicking out amidst the chaos outside, loud shouts and footsteps pounding against the floor, threatening everything I had begun to build in my life. "Ella, no. We can't trust them." "Not now," Ruby argued, laced with panic, her eyes darting between me and the impending danger encroaching upon us. "You don't know what he's capable of, neither do you," I shot back, my voice ringing with frustrated despair. "I can't stand by and let our family history dictate our present. If we don't trust, we have no future." The weight of uncertainty paired with the thick tension hanging in the air forced us to reevaluate everything. Greg stepped forward cautiously. "We need to focus on what lies ahead. If we want a chance, we can't waste time. They're here for something. Someone figuring it out before they do can give us leverage," but I could feel the gulf of hesitation washing over us, so I focused on the thin thread of trust that wove between those willing to let go of their pasts. "Then let's use what we have together," I said, my voice steady and strong amidst the turmoil. "Help me help us. You're not outsiders anymore, and neither am I. We're stronger together." With these words, I found myself challenging them not as separated hearts bound by fear, but as lost souls reaching for connection in a world that threatened to shake our very foundations apart. "Okay," Ben said, stepping closer. "Then let's find those notes your mother left behind. They could provide a path forward." That I nodded, my heart steadying as the tension began to morph into something more concrete. With every heartbeat echoing my trust in those surrounding me, determination settled in my bones like an unyielding hand. A loud bang resonated through the shed, pushing urgency through my veins. "Go. Now." Daniel growled, tension coiling around us as he surged to the front. "Give me your arm, each of you." With hands clasped together, I felt the connection of all our struggles couldn't be severed so easily. We huddled close, whispering the plan into existence. "When I say go, we push straight through, we won't look back," Daniel instructed firmly, glancing between each of our faces, and I could see the resolve shining deeper every second. Point 1, the weight of the word hung heavy in the air, time stretching like elastic. 2, urgency ebbing as shared breaths echoed a pact of strength. Point 3. In that moment, we bolted as one, a wave of adrenaline surging through us, pushing us toward our uncertain destiny, breaking out of the shed, braving the world beyond. Together we barreled forth, and face to face with the cold metallic glint of the weapons trained on us, we felt the shift of the universe ready to unravel our fate. Tempted fate for the last time, I reached down to draw strength from my mother's shadow, the whisperings of her love flooding through like a rush of spring water. I had pieces of her still with me, fragments of her magic still buoying my spirit, and as we sprinted towards our next choices, I could feel the tide begin to turn towards something larger than all of us, but the moment slowed as we erupted into the open air, and the thugs converged like wolves. I stood at the center, adrenaline surging while fear whispered into the corners of my mind, threatening to pull me into the chaos once more. Yet as the confrontation came closer, I breathed deep, drawing on every ounce of resolve I had cultivated through grief and pain. I felt the warmth of Ruba's hand steady beside me, the strength of Ben and Greg pooling into a Tethra's one beating heart. "Leave her alone," I shouted, the sound of my voice ringing with courage, a clarity cascading through the shadows that chained me to the past. "You want me? Then let's talk." And therein lay the pivot, the reminder that deep within the storm, a whisper of hope remained. A voice echoed through the darkness, still holding on to the promise that scars could be transformed into bridges, forging a path toward shared redemption. the world around me faded as we walked unflinchingly towards the heart of uncertainty, the truth waiting on the other side, our stories unfolding, our destinies interwoven like threads pulled taut, still binding us despite all odds, guided toward light. By the love we shared, the choices we made stepping forward into the unknown. As the weight of the world prepared to collide, I held tight to the promise of who I was becoming, a resonance of strength in my heart whispering that love could truly conquer all. In that heartbeat, I found my mother again, her spirit guiding me through the tempest veiled in danger, and I knew whatever lay ahead in this tangled journey would finally bring true understanding, true connection, and a renewal of legacy bathed in hope. For in the end, every choice, every moment mattered, and as we charged into the unknown, I understood that stories, no matter how fractured, held the power to redefine us, and together, perhaps, we would find the light.